Thank you. Hello, my name is Emily Dexter. I live at 9 Fenno Street, and thank you very much for having this hearing, everybody, members of the City Council and School Committee and the CPS administration. And first, I'd just like to start off by thanking everybody. My second daughter is about to graduate from the high school, and she's gotten a wonderful education in our schools and in our city, and I think she's been really lucky to grow up in Cambridge. So thank you so much for everybody who's contributed to that. In terms of the school budget, I know that we all want the same thing in terms of equity, but I think we are not having the right conversation, and that's why we are not making more progress. I think there's three problems. First of all, we have three myths that we're really stuck on in the city. The first is the myth, and this is all related to the budget, the first is the myth of mediocre achievement in our schools. This is simply not true. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education suggests 10 demographically similar districts we should be comparing ourselves to, including Framingham and Waltham and several others. Our MCAS results are quite respectable. In fact, they're at the top of that group of 11 schools. There's really nothing to be ashamed of in terms of our MCAS scores, and our student growth percentiles are right at the center. But in fact, the more important thing is that there's not a single district in this state that really has impressive results for low-income students. We are not doing well at all, but neither is anybody else in terms of low-income students and gaps. The gaps within the districts are much larger than the gaps between the districts. That's the important thing to remember here. The second myth is that some of our schools are better or more effective at educating diverse students. Well, that may be true, but nobody has shown me any evidence that any of our schools are doing a better or a worse job educating low-income students. And I'm going to give you a report here that was written by myself and another parent, Leslie Brunetta. It's called Unequal Schools, Unequal Demographic Staffing and Neighborhood Challenges that Create Unequal Opportunities for Low-Income Students to Learn in Our Elementary Schools. In this report, we look closely at the different demographics of our schools and show that they are simply not comparable. If you look beyond simple categories such as low income, white, African American, Black, Latino, you will see within any of these groups that there are many subgroups and subgroups. White students with disabilities, white students without disabilities, Black students who speak English at home, Black students who do not speak English at home, etc. So what we often do is we take one category, such as low-income students, and we compare them across the schools and say, this school is doing better than that school, without ever asking, do some of these students have more challenges than others? So that's the second point, is I have seen no evidence that any of our schools are more or less effective than others. But the third most important one is the myth of generous spending. The myth is that we spend a lot of money on our students. This is also not true, particularly at the elementary level. We spend a lot of money on our schools, our buses, our administration, our buildings, but we don't spend a lot of money where it makes the most difference, which is in the classroom. You may be alarmed to hear this, and I'm going to give you a set of graphs after this that show a lot of this information. You may be alarmed to hear this, but with our $22,000 per pupil expenditures, our student-teacher ratios for our general education teachers are exactly the same as in Waltham, and only slightly better than Framingham and Boston. We have a lot of special education staff, which makes our student-teacher ratios look larger, smaller in some reports, but if you look specifically at the general education teachers in our classrooms, the ratios are not impressive. Even more alarming, our class sizes in the early grades, when children are learning to read and do basic math, are not at all small. In some cases, they are larger than in our middle and high school grades. According to the budget, next year, 45% of our first and second graders will be in classes of 23 to 24 students. Only 30% will be in classes of 20 or fewer. And one of the most reliable findings in educational research is that reducing class size improves achievement, particularly for low-income children. And this has been found over and over again. So if you look at our staffing, it's not impressive. I also have a graph in here that shows that over the last 7 years, our expenditures for everything but teachers have increased by 46%. Our expenditures for teachers have increased by 13%. So we really are not even advancing our classroom expenditures at the rate of the rest of the budget. There's also a lot of other things that we don't provide our students, such as world language, full-time art teachers, etc. So these three myths, that our achievement is mediocre, that some of our schools are more effective at educating diverse students than others, and that we spend generously on our students, has led most people in the city to ask, what's the problem? Why aren't our students doing better? And the answer is because we are trying primarily to fix schools that are not broken, rather than try to close the achievement gaps by accelerating the progress of students working below grade level and targeting our resources at those students in every single school. Again, this is true with the district statewide. The biggest achievement gaps are within our schools. They are not across our schools.
Ms. Dexter, the timer's gone off, so if you could finish up,
let
and
me
we
just
can
finish
certainly
up.
submit those.
Yeah, and I'm just finishing here. What I see in this budget is a refusal to add staff at the school level, and I'm just going to make three recommendations of things that we could do to make a big difference. Frequent and sustained one-to-one tutoring, perhaps particularly in the early grades. Reducing absences. Students are missing 4 weeks of school per year in some cases, and a summer reading program for every elementary school student reading below grade level. And there's also several decades of research showing that world language instruction and integrating the arts education into the academics is very effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you.